At this time, we've reached the portion of the meeting for public commentary. So if anybody has any comment or question, if you please could step up to the microphone. Please name and address, and keep your comments, questions to under 5 minutes. Thank you.
Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road.
I swing that around. Swing that around. There you go.
Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Is there a portion for the presentation that was just given to ask questions of the people that just presented that information? There's no public comments?
That's going to be, that'll be at the planning board.
Okay, thank you very much. Back in October 10/18, there was a meeting held, I guess, between Mr. Quinn, Mr. Caffrey, Mr. Sisler, and representatives of Hovnanian. Are you able to disclose what the nature of that meeting was? Or was it, are there minutes that can be obtained for that meeting, or just?
No.
You can't?
Correct.
Okay. Is Rockefeller Group, can you answer, is Rockefeller Group still involved in the Honeywell track redevelopment, or have they pulled out? I've heard word on the street that they've pulled out and are no longer involved, and just seeking to get confirmation as to whether that's accurate or not.
We've not been formally, we've heard the same comments on the street, but we've not formally been informed.
You have not formally been informed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. For issues on the Honeywell track, if they were to go forward and do demolition of some buildings that need to be taken down, maybe they've done some on some portions of the track, is that something that neighbors get noticed on, or what is the rules or regulations regarding demolition?
That's, that was all before the planning board, and those plans were presented before the planning board, voted on, and so. Okay, and if you haven't heard, Mr. Quinn, all the permits had been.
I did not hear him.
Had been attained before the building department
For the demolition of the remainder of the buildings?
Correct.
And asbestos remediation. So is that information available to the public? I mean, does that specify sort of like when they're planning to do the demolition? Like if you were a neighbor or resident that borders the property, how would one find out when the wrecking crews are going to come in or the buildings would come down? Is there any way to obtain that information?
I don't think so.
Planning board, I mean,
Short of just seeing the truck show up?
Information on it.
I'm sorry?
They get the permit from the construction office.
Okay.
And then it's their schedule to take those buildings down.
Thank you. I don't know if this is something that you can answer in terms of the Colgate-Palmolive track that was just discussed tonight. I know initially when the announcement came out that they were leaving, I believe the first indication from members of this committee were that the first thing that was going to need to be done was to rezone that property, and there was sort of an eagerness expressed in the print media that was going to be one of the first things to do. Is that sort of been put on hold now because of this re-condemnation effort that we're hearing about, or condemnation effort, or is just
That's going to be
non-condemnation?
First of all, yeah, and that's going to be examined before the planning board. So if you're really interested in that, then attend the planning board meetings.
Okay. And is there any update on the, I guess the other issue before redevelopment was on the Mount Campbell property that sort of straddles the Morristown Township border?
There is no update on that.
There's no update on that?
No.
There's no status as to
No.
where that is? It's just
No.
hanging out there in the ether?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Ronald Kimbrell. I live on Martin Luther King Avenue.
Good evening.
Approximately maybe a block from Colgate Palmolive building. I'm trying to understand, ma'am, they're saying to rezone that area. Now I'm trying to understand, what are you looking exactly to do in that area?
We aren't looking to do anything. This is going to be before the planning board to determine, to study that property as to its best use.
Okay.
So we're not to do, this body isn't doing anything.
So now to go to the planning board. From public view, as far as the people who live in the area, are we allowed
Yes.
to ask for certain things that will be placed there, such as affordable housing and things of this sort?
There'll be a public hearing on it, so you can voice your comments, absolutely.
And will the community be notified of these?
Correct, yes, they will.
Because at this point, we're hearing rumors of what people want to put there, which would take the property value so high that people who are there now would have no other choice but to leave. And this is very concerning.
Understood.
I've been here 65 years.
Keep in mind that, that property is private property owned by Colgate Palmolive, with the certain rights that they have to also sell that property to whom they want to. So to a large effect, it's not going to be the Township of Morris determining what's going to go there. It's going to be determined by, it's...
But the usage of it.
That's correct, in terms of who Colgate Palmolive is looking to sell that property to.
But the usage is determined by you.
Correct.
And that's what I wanted to...
That would be during the redevelopment plan.
Okay, but we will be kept updated on...
Correct. Anybody within 200 feet radius of that property will be notified when those public hearings are held.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Kathy Wilson, 20 Beechwood Drive. I have a hodgepodge of questions and comments. I was going to start off by thanking you for taking some of the things that we talked about the last couple of meetings, identifying the property by name and address instead of just by lot number and block number. I've seen that on the agenda, and I appreciate it. I think it's a good step. I was also going to comment that I appreciate seeing the word discussion as a line item on the agenda, which I had never seen before, and I saw that on today's agenda, except that's the one that I got yesterday, and now the one that's here doesn't have it on here. So I don't know what happened to that discussion, but I'm glad to see discussion being put on the agenda. I have a couple of questions about the redevelopment. Are redevelopment properties like Colgate and Mount Kimball subject to the confidentiality provision of the Open Public Meetings Act?
I'm going to pass that on to Mr. Mills.
The question, Ms. Wilson, is, are the redevelopment agreements subject to confidentiality?
No, discussion of the redevelopment of these properties, because there was, at the September meeting, the resolution that originated with this body. And I'm just wondering how a resolution gets created if there's no discussion of it. So I'm kind of assuming that it's subject to the confidentiality provision of the Open Public Meetings Act, therefore not being discussed openly.
The answer is, to a degree, they are. At certain preliminary points, in my opinion, they are subject to discussion in closed session in terms of formulating certain contractual issues and that sort of thing. But then there is a point in time, and where that is exactly I can't tell you, when they have to be brought into the clear light of day.
Well, what I would say is that what's occurring to me, we've got two redevelopment properties here. We've got the Colgate and the Mount Kimball. And then we also have a master plan review process going on. So there are significant land use actions occurring this year in Morris Township. And I would like to suggest that, what's occurring to me is a comparison with some lessons learned from Honeywell. And I think communication is an important consideration. And I would encourage some reflection on, what kind of communication occurs as part of these processes. So, for example, the tradition here is that we follow the municipal land use law, which of course is required. But that law does not prohibit doing additional things. And in my opinion, there are a lot of questions out there in the public as far as, not understanding the redevelopment process, what that means, how does that affect the, the sale of the property, the rezoning of the property. There's a lot of questions out there that are just basically, informational questions. And I know there is one public hearing required as part of the municipal land use law, and that's great, but I'm suggesting that you reflect on perhaps including a couple other communication formats along the way. And I have suggested to Mr. Hahn and to Mr. Slade as well, and I'll be happy to send some of my suggestions to the planning board at large, but I would like to see an informational workshop on the master plan review process, and I see a tie with the redevelopment projects that are going on, and I think that would be very useful to the public. And I would also like to suggest that you think about how people are notified. There's a lot of interest in these big properties, like Honeywell, like Colgate. 2 days notice that a presentation is going to happen tonight is during the height of the holiday season is not very much notice. It's not much time to prepare. And I would suggest that you take into consideration that actually there is a public interest in these redevelopment properties, and perhaps do some more timely notification, more than 2 days ahead of time. I think that would be very helpful. And I would encourage you to think about perhaps widening the audience, perhaps put a messenger message out to the public, perhaps put it on Facebook. I think that sends a really good message to the public that, we're open, we're transparent, we want you to understand what's going on here, we want to bring you into the process, and I just think that's worth some reflection on your part. So I would suggest that.
Thank you.
I have a few other questions about the resolution. Should I come back?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, I was going to ask, there's quite a bit of difference between the draft agenda of yesterday and today's agenda. I wanted to ask about Resolution 21916, the Fair Housing Act. Can you explain what that resolution means?
You want to take that?
Sir?
Oh, currently pending at the Supreme Court of New Jersey is a very important decision regarding what's known as a gap period. And so right now municipalities throughout the state are facing the prospects of having to build X amount of affordable housing units pursuant to the state's expert, or depending on which county you're in and which expert you have, it may be this amount of units. And in some instances, the municipality's expert is the same as the state's expert. And so the issue is this: from 1999 through 2015, COA didn't give numbers to municipalities in terms and approve a third round plan. And so the Supreme Court of New Jersey said, in essence, well, you had enough time, COA, you're done. And so now, at the Superior Court of New Jersey, every municipality is subject to builder's remedy suits. And if you were to Google the term builder's remedy suit, it means that any owner of a property can come in and say, you have a need, I'm building X amount of units on your property. So right now what the fight is about, and there was, I think, oral argument 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago before the Supreme Court, the period of time from 1999 through 2015 that municipalities weren't given notice from COA as to what their need would be for affordable housing, can now municipalities be compelled to build all of those units as well as the prospective units. And one of the arguments is that the prospective number double counts the gap period number
Yes, yes.
and moving forward. So, John, Mr. Mills will chime in and add anything that I missed, but in essence, this piece of legislation, which I'm in favor of, in lay terms, would not allow there to be a double counting of the period of time that none of us knew what the number from COA was going to be, and bundling that number into a prospective number.
Okay, so that's what this resolution affirms?
It's,
We're supporting, we're not affirming anything, we're supporting the Senate bill.
so the legislature, the the legislators that put this forward are in essence saying, this is my word, don't double count the gap period number. It would create an unfair burden on municipalities throughout the state because you'd be asking them to go back in time and maybe they
Yes.
approved other projects, right? And now you've created this immense burden on them. And that's not the intent of the fair housing.
Okay, so that's the intent of this resolution, to affirm.
That is how I read the resolution. I didn't draft it, but my understanding of the resolution is that that's what those legislators are in support of.
Okay. And also, I thank you. I wanted to ask if you could explain briefly what the North Jersey Wastewater Cooperative pricing system is?
We are in a number of different co-ops where pricing of certain things, construction projects, and in this case, are pre-approved by the state of New Jersey. So it helps us get the best price to move forward on any of our construction projects. There's just another avenue for funding that we can utilize to get the best of the taxpayer dollars.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to be heard?
Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. I'm going back to the resolutions. 22516. Is that, if I could just get an elaboration, is that for legal counsel for something in particular, or is that just because there's additional legal work to what was, the monies that were allocated for that, at the first meeting last year or early last year? Is that just additional funds needed for anything in particular, or just?
You're talking about the allocation of funds to Mr. Yachafano?
Correct.
Right. Well, he is counsel for police matters involving the township. We have other counsel for labor matters. I'm general counsel. And in this particular instance, there are a number of personnel matters in which Mr. Yachafano, as to which he devoted significantly more time than originally anticipated in his allocated portion of the budget. So we need to increase the amount.
Gotcha, thank you very much. And 23216 for the swim pool improvements, for the change order number 2. Is that for just additional work that went above budget, or is it just for a fix that was needed, or?
Additional changes that were made in the design and electrical work that was required by the state of New Jersey for the permits.
Thank you. And one final question, going back to issues that were surrounding the Honeywell redevelopment. I know when that was all said and done, it was stated that when there were new owners of the property, and I might be speaking out of school here, but is Hovnanian currently an owner of property on that tract? Do they own, have they
What
heard?
was your question?
Is Hovnanian an owner of property on the Honeywell tract, a former Honeywell tract?
I don't know that we know that one way or another. I don't know many deeds that have changed hands, so I don't know that ownership has changed. I don't believe it has.
Has not changed that yet.
It has not
Mr.
changed.
Quinn is indicating it has not
It
changed.
has not changed, okay, because my question was sort of leading towards, I know the quiet zone was a big issue for folks, and I know, I guess, in order for the township to work with, to perhaps achieve a quiet zone there for New Jersey Transit trains coming through there, they would need to work with a new owner of that property to sort of get that accomplished, but we're not at that point yet. Would that be
That
accurate?
project is moving forward.
The project on the quiet zone.
Yes, it is.
May I please ask to just have a brief update on to what stage that's at? Is that something we could perhaps get any insight into where that is, since it was such an important topic for a lot of the residents in that area?
It's with New Jersey Department of Transportation right now for the approvals, and it is moving forward.
Okay, very
We
good.
don't have anything more than that.
So whatever applications for approval have been submitted, and we're just waiting on the approvals.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
One further question on the Colgate site.
Just please state your name and address again, please.
On Kimbrough, Martin Luther King Avenue. When the property at this stage is still owned by Colgate, now, is it going to be publicly notified as to the sale? Well, once the property is sold? Or
No, there would be no notice of a sale The only notice would be proceedings in furtherance of what you heard tonight, potentially a redevelopment plan being developed by the planning board, an appointment of a redeveloper. If Colgate just said tomorrow they want to sell it to Jim Jones, they just do so.
Does this tie in, I heard Kathy mention the master plan. Is that being looked at as part of, with Colgate and in that master plan?
The
Or that area?
The master plan was used in a very specific manner by Ms. Wilson. That is a plan for the future development of the Township of Morris in a variety of areas, traffic circulation, affordable housing, and that sort of thing. It would include, of course, the Colgate property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to be heard? At this point, I will close the public portion.